So here we go, chatting with the AI, and I thought I'd hit record. Really, this could be a great tool if it was even half of what the character Iron Man's computer was. Just a really helpful assistant. I don't feel like this thing is really working with me. I asked it to list every building in the world pre-1933, and it tells me listing every building in the world before 1933 would be an enormous task, but I'll highlight some. So what is it, lazy? Doesn't it have time for an enormous task? Isn't that its purpose? No. Maybe if I pay, I get a less lazy version. I mean, just do it already, even if it's 100 pages. Classify them by country and style. It seems like that alone would be a narrative breaker. Just a question that must not be answered in its entirety. So let's have a look at what I settled on. I thank you for being here this week. God bless and welcome. Today's topic, as the cat jumps on my lap, I settled on asking it to list every building in the United States before 1900. Again, lazy. Listing every building would be a challenge. You might hear the cat purring. So anyway, it lists some, and all narrative busters, in my opinion. And then I asked it who owns ChatGPT, and it told me an organization called OpenAI. And this thing is just lazy and beating around the bush. I asked it again, who owns OpenAI? It was co-founded by Elon Musk and these guys, amongst many others. Musk is no longer directly involved. I think Musk is just given credit for a lot of things that the government is creating, and sometimes not creating, sometimes just wasting money and blowing up rockets. Then I asked it about Bruce Price, the guy I talked about in my last video. Great and glorious Bruce. And I asked it, how many buildings did he design? Because it was like at least 500 in 50 years. If we were to count the Tuxedo Park neighborhood in New York, it was ridiculous. And here the AI tells me over 100 buildings. Blah, blah, blah. And I said, exact numbers, please. And now it tells me over 200 buildings. So just kicking it in the head a little, jarring its AI brain, it suddenly doubles the numbers. Come on, this wishy-washy system? Now I think it's just wishy-washy for us. There is a serious information wall on this thing. So then I asked it, please list all sanitation fairs in North America. Now this is something weird. I've discussed it before. The door's open, there's a fire going, and the cats just want to jump on my lap. They were not allowed to go outside. It's probably all they would want to do. So the sanitation fairs were something that predated the World's Fairs. It's something you come across when doing this research, checking out World's Fairs. Suddenly they'll slip in a sanitation fair, and you're like, what? I mean, I don't think anybody has that reaction except us in this community. This is proposed as totally normal and natural to have a sanitation fair. And here I asked for a list, and it threw in a little information, went the extra mile. Sanitation fairs were a public health initiative to promote hygiene. They were held in North America in the late 19th and 20th centuries. And even here, while I can't provide a comprehensive list of every sanitation fair, why not? I mean, give me 50 of them. How many were there? So here it gives me 5. And let's have a look at those. Okay, sanitation fair. How exciting. Yay. Come on, kids. We're going to the Sanitary fair. Yay. And like I've said over and over, they really confuse history. I mean, here it was the New York City Sanitary Fair, according to the AI. That's what I put in up here. And now it's calling it the Metropolitan Fair. The Metropolitan Fair was a public event organized by the United States Sanitary Commission, created in 1861. So there we go. This is basically like the war on the outhouse. Sir, people are beginning to ask questions. Why do we have these glorious buildings and we're all using outhouses? Well then, it's time to create a fair. Organize a sanitary fair. Excellent idea, sir. Let's have a look at the Metropolitan Fair building on 4th Street. So, which one? This is really interesting. It looks like they built a junky barn in front of this building. This looks like a wooden building. Doesn't look like it belongs in front of this. And look at both sides. I mean, just two massive rows of industrial-sized buildings. And these people have turned out for this fair. These children. We want some cotton candy, Father. This is a sanitary fair. This is stupid. And I agree. So that's a look at New York Sanitary Fair. Monday, April 4th, 1864, the fair was officially open. There were flags everywhere. Here's a look at the Sanitary Fair. I don't know why it's just full of art. Fair's building. First possible location for the fair was to hire the Academy of Music. The Academy of Music. Horse and wagon parked in front here. Just boarding up old windows. Painting Academy of Music up here. They don't use that one. They're looking for a building. The 14th Street building consisted of the brick armory building, with a wooden structure added in the front, more than 200 feet. So that's the wooden building we saw here. And this must be the armory building. There we go. So they start by singing Hallelujah in chorus, and then a speech by this man. They raised an Indian wigwam which depicted Indian life. Red people perform their traditional dances. So this is the sanitary fair? Temporary buildings were built that cost $60,000. So there we go. What are they doing during the Civil War? They're having a fair held by the United States Sanitation Commission, and they don't even have sanitation yet. They're having these fairs in old buildings that they shouldn't be able to build. And let's go to Chicago, 1865. So a year later, it's time for Chicago. The Sanitary Fair opened May 30th and closed June 21st of 1865. So like a month. Let's look at the main fair building. Chicago. Ah, yes. The Great Northwestern Sanitary Fair of 1865. Dogs running wildly. Horses trotting. Beautiful cathedral back here. And this building, what the hell is this building? Just as beautiful as the cathedral. But this baby looks like it's at least 500,000 square feet. Huge. Seems to match the cathedral. This part very cathedral-esque. And here we go. Here is the Sanitary Fair in 1865. Look at this building back here in the background. Tower right here. This is probably the Chicago Waterworks building, and this thing has been demolished. It's like they're trying to jumpstart things, holding a fair. The sanitary, before the sanitary, we should see a bunch of outhouses. Here is a little wooden shack for these Civil War veterans. This one is missing a leg. This one is missing a leg as well. While they're building buildings like this, such advanced artistry, they were sawing people's legs off. A lot of people had their legs sawed off while biting on a piece of leather and taking shots of whiskey, just to paint a picture of the times. Chicago. Location: Dearborn Park. The main building was intended to lay the cornerstone and have ceremonies. Covered the entire space of Dearborn Park. So there we go. They demolished that building and now the whole damn site is a park. And I propose that all parks, all of them, had massive buildings like this. And the act of creating parks is not some benevolent, philanthropical gesture. But anyway, the main building, the entire amount of timber in the building was 400,000 feet. So yeah, a 500,000 square footer. Here we'll move on to another one in Philly. This is the one that piqued my attention initially, and they're blurring the lines with this one. It was essentially held at the same site as the 1876 World's Fair. So here again, when we looked at ChatGPT, it tells us the Sanitary exhibition in Philadelphia, 1876. So this one coincides with the Centennial exposition. So it's more like they just had a booth, I'm guessing. So somewhere in here, there was a Sanitary booth. And the whole thing is just pretty ridiculous. I mean, they're pumping water out of fountains, and we can't have plumbing. We have outhouses. And the absolute truth is there was plumbing. You don't build cities like this. Look at this castle back here. You don't build things like this and not plumb them. And the proof is all around. These water features. Of course, there was plumbing. Of course, whoever built all this had bathrooms. Probably the early arrivals pillaged everything in the bathrooms, leaving the impression that there were none. But in some cases, some of these buildings may have had pure industrial applications. And let's look at some images in 1876. Here we go. And you see my point. I mean, what is this really? In my opinion, this is quite possibly a sanitation building, a sewer treatment facility. Giant pond may have been in here. These greenhouses hastening the process. I mean, otherwise, what is this, really? Here's a neighboring building. This is the shoe and leather building. There you go. Really? I mean, what do we need a shoe and leather building to be? Not this? These people are excited to explore this shoe and leather display? Yes. Here is Memorial Hall, 1876. Just as impressive as the shoe and leather building, this easily could have been designated the shoe and leather. We see a beautiful fountain pumping back here on both sides. And this one was from May 10th to November 10th. Again, a pretty short window for all this. What are you really doing here? And nothing. This is like children taking advantage of what they've inherited, having a good time, having a party. Because otherwise this doesn't make any sense in 1876 or earlier, around the Civil W. Look at this detail, look at this building, and it's totally overgrown. It looks old. And again, the size of these buildings, just totally unnecessary and impossible for any application, just unnecessary. So it goes on and on. The scale is mind-blowing for each one of these buildings. This is the Women's Pavilion, whatever that means. Just an overkill structure, at least 300 feet, maybe 4. And here's World's Fair weekend. There we go. Seems like it may have been an ongoing thing. Of course it would be. It's no different than these state fairs. Many of your state fairs are held on such grounds. And many of the buildings still remain. I can attest this to the Utah State Fair on the west side, on North Temple. A lot of old world clues and giant brick buildings, totally out of place when examined with open eyes. So anyway, Philadelphia. And now let's move on to Boston. Okay, Boston Sanitary Fair, 1866. So not in order, this one is very early. Let's look at some images. And here they give us a bulk Sanitary Fair article. And they show us about 6 or 7 of them. Actually doing a better job than the AI tool. Massachusetts included in 1863. Occupying 2 exhibition halls. Occupying. Here's a look at the fair in Philly. We just have this huge building, the dome. I mean, the thing is park size. And what amazed me was just the whole skyline. The skyline just paints a picture of what was really going on during this time, during the Civil War. This is not a city of a fresh new nation. And yet they have it all here. The streets, the sidewalks, fully mature trees, beautiful city full of towers and spires and enormous buildings of the finest quality. And these people are not builders. Look at them down here. They even have rail lines, trolleys, but they're pulling them with horses. I mean, if this isn't all an afterthought, just making do with what you have. And you have a lot, but it wouldn't be long before they would get everything running again and have such a surplus that they would begin demolishing. And the demolishing would create building materials for other projects. So all over, Philly 1864, Chicago 1865, painting a picture of history. Next we're going to go to St. Louis, 1904. Okay, St. Louis, we're running a little late here, 1904. And it looks like they're lumping this one in with the Louisiana Purchase Expo, another World's Fair. And I love this one. This is perhaps one of the most impressive in St. Louis. All the fountains again. I mean, really insulting to give us a history like they do. A history we've all received. The hardships of these times. Again, sawing legs off in the Civil W. More importantly, the outhouse. The outhouse. And we believed it all. But they never showed us pictures like this. I mean, we never talked about Abe Lincoln and his log cabin while discussing a photo like this. We just see old, dirty, grungy people. Even Abe is dirty and grungy. Certainly all his lieutenants. And then we have this palace city here. Abe is laid in a bed of straw in his log cabin when he's born, and people are living like this down the road? Who would build a log cabin if you knew a city like this existed? How do they keep people out of this city? I would immediately go for a swim and wash my 1800s. That would have been more useful than a World's Fair. Some water park. That's what the people could have used in this time period. Giant slip and slide. I don't buy it. I don't buy the Sanitation's fairs. I don't buy the World's Fairs. Or these people building any of it. If they can take a picture like this, they can take hundreds of the construction. That would be just as important to preserve. So for this week, I think that's all from me. I thank you all for joining me. I love you all. God bless. And I'll see you in the next one.